Chapter 44. Olivia. "Let's go!" Olivia shouts from the driver's seat of the little white sedan. "We're coming!" Kim yells back as she and Tina come running to the car, their hands filled with first aid supplies. Rose is in the passenger seat, a hunting rifle resting on her lap. Leia is already in the back with a collection of weapons, ranging from the knives they had sharpened earlier to a couple of handguns and rifles that the guys left behind with Adam. As soon as everyone is inside, Olivia turns around in her seat and looks at her companions. "Are you all sure about this?" she asks. "We could just drive away and disappear." Rose shakes her head. "We've already been over this, Olivia. We need to do everything we can to rid the world of Zeke," she says. "I would love to run away, but if we did and he survived this, I'd feel guilty that I'd let it happen. And every other woman he brutalized would be on our shoulders," Leia adds. "Tina?" She picks up one of the handguns, a small 9mm pistol, and pulls the slide back. "It's time to pay them back for everything," she says. "I think I know your answer," she says to Kim. "Let's fuck 'em up," Kim says, grinning at her friend. "Sounds like a plan," Olivia replies, before shifting the car into gear and slamming her foot down on the gas pedal. The tires skip and roll on the dry, gravelly dirt for a moment before digging in. They bump and rattle down to the gate, but just before Olivia makes the turn toward town, Kim touches her shoulder. "Hold on a second." Olivia presses the brakes, and they skid to a stop. Kim climbs out and walks around back and opens the trunk. She leans inside, and Olivia looks at Leia. "What's she doing?" "I don't know," she replies with a shrug. Olivia leans out the window and shouts, "What the fuck are you doing? Hold on!" A moment later, a gasoline-filled Coke bottle with a burning rag stuffed in the top arcs through the sky. It lands on the roof of the house and explodes, spraying burning fuel in all directions. "Are we done?" Olivia asks, just as a second bottle hurtles through the air, striking the side of the barn, sending flaming gasoline down the side of the faded red wall. "We're done now," Kim says, as she climbs into the back seat again. Olivia shakes her head and pulls out into the highway, the tires screeching as they grip the asphalt. It only takes about 10 minutes to reach the outskirts of Buellton. Olivia steers around a couple of abandoned cars sitting in the middle of the highway. "The world really got fucked up fast, didn't it?" Leia asks. "Sure seems like it," Kim replies. As they're approaching the center of town, Rose grabs Olivia's arm. "Oh shit," she says. "What?" Kim asks from the back seat, as she peers out the windshield. "Oh, fuck, is that Billy?" A rusty old pickup truck is sitting in the roadway in the center of the business district. The hood is up, and 3 of Zeke's men are arguing with each other while leaning into the engine bay. Billy is sitting on the tailgate, eating a bag of chips he probably took from Olivia's family's grocery store. He looks up when he spots their car. "I think they're broken down," Rose says. "Get ready," Olivia says. She rolls the car to a stop about a block from the broken-down truck. They can see Billy staring at them, a confused look on his face. "What should we do?" Kim asks. "We're gonna kill him," Rose answers, while pulling the slide back on her pistol. "Keep the guns hidden," Olivia says, as they climb out of the car. Billy is now walking toward them, while his other 3 companions are still tinkering with the engine. Olivia takes the lead, moving slowly down the street, her fingers wrapped tightly around the grips of a 9mm pistol tucked into her front pocket. "What the fuck are you doing here?" Billy asks, frowning at them. "Thought you might need help," Olivia replies. He stares at her, his face a mass of confusion. Without another word, she pulls the pistol out of her pocket and raises it. It takes him a moment to realize what's happening, but by then, it's too late. He fumbles for his gun as she fires 2 shots. The first strikes him in the chest, and the second tears through his throat. A second later, he collapses, his eyes wide in astonishment. The other 3 men jump down from the truck when they hear the shooting, wiping their greasy hands on their jeans. One of them, a nasty-looking man in his early 40s, spots the pistol in Olivia's hand. "Jesus Christ!" he shouts, before dashing back for the safety of the truck. Kim pulls the old shotgun out from behind her back, racks it, and fires. The pellets rip into his leg, knocking him to the ground and spraying blood across the back of the truck. Rose raises her rifle and pulls the trigger, peppering the truck with bullets. The other 2 thugs start to duck for cover, but one of the bullets punctures the fuel tank, and almost instantly, the entire vehicle bursts into flames and then explodes, shattering storefront windows, engulfing the men and knocking a couple of the girls to the ground. "Holy shit!" Leia shouts as she rushes forward to help them up. "Is everyone okay?" "We're fine," Olivia says as she looks at Kim and Rose. "What the fuck was that?" Leia asks. "That was a good start," Olivia replies. John. "On 3, John shouts, and all at once, 4 Molotov cocktails arc through the air toward the little group of vehicles, trying to force their way through the gate. The first bottle lands short, exploding on the driveway, spewing flaming gasoline on the ground. But the other 3 strike home. 2 of them hit the lead truck, instantly enveloping it in a sheet of fire that quickly begins consuming the vehicle, while the driver and passengers bail out, trying to find cover as Dean and Stacia open fire. The third bottle lands on the hood of the second car in line, exploding in a ball of flame that spreads across the entire front of the sedan. The third truck quickly reverses away from the gate, ramming into the last vehicle in the process, disabling both of them. Dean turns fire on the last 2 vehicles, peppering them with bullets and taking out one attacker with a shot to the chest. But their initial success is short-lived, as at least 10 of Zeke's men rush the gate in force, leaping over the barrier, firing as they run. Stacia stands up and fires on the group, hitting 2 of them before turning to retreat. She weaves in and out of the trees, staying as low as possible as bullets tear into the tree trunks and rip up the thick undergrowth. John can't see Daniel or Lori, but the sound of gunfire in the distance hopefully means they are still in the fight. John whistles loudly and waves his arm in the air, and Dean and Anna and Jason begin a strategic retreat, firing intermittently as they withdraw. John scampers away from the little concrete block wall, grabbing 2 more of the cocktails before he does. A hail of gunfire rips through the trees, and John throws himself to the ground, covering his head, as if that's any real defense against a bullet. Suddenly, a large man with a filthy plaid shirt and an unkempt beard comes charging toward him. John throws one of the bottles at him. The glass container strikes him in the head and shatters, spilling gasoline all over him. He sputters and coughs as the fuel seeps into his mouth and eyes. "I'll kill you!" he bellows, while wiping his eyes and screaming. John pulls a lighter out of his pocket and flicks it to life, touching the flame to the rag in the other bottle. He flings the firebomb at him, but misses. The big man snarls at him. "Now you're dead!" he shouts. But a split second later, the cocktail hits a tree behind him and bursts into flame, spraying burning gasoline all around. Instantly, the fuel on the ground from the first bottle ignites, and a moment later, the man is completely engulfed. John scrambles away on his hands and knees as the man screams for a few seconds, and then collapses in a fiery heap. Gunshots are all around him as John gets to his feet and pulls the receiver back on his assault rifle. He can't see anyone as he races through the woods some 30 yards from the driveway. "Where the fuck is Zeke?" he says to himself as he darts behind a large tree as more bullets tear chunks of bark off the trunk. He steps out quickly and fires a short, controlled burst into the trees before slipping back behind the tree again. Peering around the side, he spots 2 men approaching, each of them armed with a bolt-action hunting rifle. One shot before reload. He leans out and fires again, hitting the lead attacker in the stomach and ducking back just in time before more bullets rip into the tree. He looks up and spots one of the log traps hanging in the branches a few yards away. He takes in a breath, holding it for a second, before taking off running. "Hey!" someone shouts as something stings him in the left calf. He stumbles but keeps on moving, leaping over the tripwire hidden in the undergrowth. Chapter 44. Olivia. "Let's go!" Olivia shouts from the driver's seat of the little white sedan. "We're coming!" Kim yells back as she and Tina come running to the car, their hands filled with first aid supplies. Rose is in the passenger seat, a hunting rifle resting on her lap. Leia is already in the back with a collection of weapons, ranging from the knives they had sharpened earlier to a couple of handguns and rifles that the guys left behind with Adam. As soon as everyone is inside, Olivia turns around in her seat and looks at her companions. "Are you all sure about this?" she asks. "We could just drive away and disappear." Rose shakes her head. "We've already been over this, Olivia. We need to do everything we can to rid the world of Zeke," she says. "I would love to run away, but if we did and he survived this, I'd feel guilty that I'd let it happen. And every other woman he brutalized would be on our shoulders," Leia adds. "Tina?" She picks up one of the handguns, a small 9mm pistol, and pulls the slide back. "It's time to pay them back for everything," she says. "I think I know your answer," she says to Kim. "Let's fuck 'em up," Kim says, grinning at her friend. "Sounds like a plan," Olivia replies, before shifting the car into gear and slamming her foot down on the gas pedal. The tires skip and roll on the dry, gravelly dirt for a moment before digging in. They bump and rattle down to the gate, but just before Olivia makes the turn toward town, Kim touches her shoulder. "Hold on a second." Olivia presses the brakes, and they skid to a stop. Kim climbs out and walks around back and opens the trunk. She leans inside, and Olivia looks at Leia. "What's she doing?" "I don't know," she replies with a shrug. Olivia leans out the window and shouts, "What the fuck are you doing? Hold on!" A moment later, a gasoline-filled Coke bottle with a burning rag stuffed in the top arcs through the sky. It lands on the roof of the house and explodes, spraying burning fuel in all directions. "Are we done?" Olivia asks, just as a second bottle hurtles through the air, striking the side of the barn, sending flaming gasoline down the side of the faded red wall. "We're done now," Kim says, as she climbs into the back seat again. Olivia shakes her head and pulls out into the highway, the tires screeching as they grip the asphalt. It only takes about 10 minutes to reach the outskirts of Buellton. Olivia steers around a couple of... Chapter 45. Olivia. "Slow down," Kim shouts, as Olivia steers around a couple of abandoned cars in the middle of the highway. "We have to get there before it's too late. If we get killed out here, we're not going to be any help to them." Yeah, she replies, without reducing her speed. They reach the long, slow curve just up the road from the Homestead, and Olivia finally slows them down. "What the fuck, nuts?" Rose says, while staring through the windshield. What is it?" Leia asks, trying to see what she's looking at. Thick black smoke is rising from the burning wreckage of 3 vehicles that the girls recognize almost immediately. Olivia reduces their speed even further as they get closer to the fires. "Looks like things didn't go well for Zeke," Tina says, grinning wickedly. "That doesn't mean that John and his people are winning," Olivia warns her. She pulls off into the shoulder and shuts off the engine. "Get the first aid supplies and let's get moving," she says, before opening her door and stepping out. From their position, she can see at least 3 bodies on the road, and another 2 inside the burning vehicles. "I hope Zeke's one of them," Leah says, while coming around to the front of the car. "Somehow, I doubt it." "Agreed," she replies. Olivia takes one of the rifles from Kim and starts jogging down the side of the road towards the front gate, her eyes constantly scanning the area for any sign of movement. But other than the sound of gunfire in the distance, the only noise nearby is the crackle of the fire as it slowly consumes the cars and trucks. They stop a few yards from the gate, kneeling in the high weeds. "What the hell is that?" Tina asks, pointing to a pickup truck that looks like it's sticking straight up out of the ground. Olivia laughs and shakes her head. "That's some good strategy, is what that is." They move in a group toward the gate, passing the bodies of 2 more of Zeke's men. The girls don't give them a second glance before stepping over them. "Looks like they got inside," Olivia says. "Sounds like they got inside," Rose adds, listening to the sound of yelling and gunfire farther down the driveway. Leah picks up a rifle, dropped by one of Zeke's dead men, and checks the action. They slip over the gate and start advancing down the winding gravel road, when Olivia freezes and sighs. "What?" Leah asks. She walks over to a large tree and squats in front of Stasia's limp body. Her eyes are open, staring at nothing. She shakes her head and then reaches out and gently closes them. "You knew her?" "Just by sight," she replies. "Keep your eyes open," Rose warns the others. They start moving again, staying close to the road, but using the trees as cover, moving quickly from one to the other. "Olivia," someone says, and she turns and spots Dean lying in the undergrowth, blood staining the front of his shirt. "Oh, shit!" She dashes to his side. "Is it bad?" "It ain't good," he replies quietly. "Leah, over here," she says, waving at her. Leah runs across the driveway and plops down the backpack full of medical supplies. "I gotta check it," she says to Dean, and he nods slowly. "How many got through?" Olivia asks him. "Maybe 10, he replies. Leah unbuttons his shirt as carefully as she can, peeling back the fabric to expose the wound. There's an angry red hole in his shoulder, but the bleeding isn't nearly as bad as it first looked. She reaches behind and underneath him, her fingers searching for an exit wound. "Well?" Olivia asks. "I can feel it," she says. "He should be okay." She starts digging through the bag and pulls out some gauze pads and cotton and gently packs the wound after dosing it with alcohol. Dean winces but doesn't cry out. A few minutes later, they have him propped up against the tree, both sides of his wounds bandaged and taped. "We gotta go," Olivia says. "You gonna be okay?" "Yeah," he replies, before reaching out and taking her hand. "Glad you came back." "Yeah, me too," she replies with a sly grin. The sound of more gunfire draws their attention, and Olivia looks at Dean again. "We'll be back," she says. "I'll be here," he replies with a weak smile. The girls start down the driveway again, toward the big house, when Olivia stops and abruptly changes course, turning into the trees. "Where are we going?" I don't want them to see us coming." "Good idea," Rose says. Just a few minutes later, they stop in front of the bodies of two of Zeke's men. They're lying on the ground, their bodies twisted and contorted, as if they'd been hit by a car. Kim looks over at the huge log hanging from the trees and nods. "That's wicked." They leave the bodies behind and move deeper into the woods, slipping from tree to tree, briefly pausing each time. Olivia freezes in place suddenly, and Rose moves up beside her. "What?" she asks. "There's Jim and Tom," she says, peering between the trees to the edge of the tree line, where the two men are hiding behind a couple of large trees, completely unaware of their presence. They're firing at someone, but neither Olivia or Rose can see who it is. "Take 'em out?" Rose asks. "Definitely." Olivia lowers her rifle and sights Jim through the scope, while Kim comes forward and replaces Rose. She aims at Tom, targeting his lower back. "On 3, Olivia whispers. 1, 2, 3. They both fire at the same time, hitting their targets with perfectly placed shots. More gunfire breaks out ahead of them, but they can't really see who's doing the firing or who's getting shot. After a few seconds, things quiet down, and Olivia looks at Rose. "What do you think?" "Let's give it a minute," she replies. They wait for a few seconds for any additional response, but when there isn't any, they creep forward to the tree line, staying low and as out of sight as they can. Olivia spots John, looking out from behind an old green SUV. "John!" she shouts. "It's Olivia!" She can see the relief on his face. He looks up toward the barn and gives someone some sort of signal before looking back toward the woods. "It's all clear," he shouts. The girls move forward, leaving the relative safety of the trees and onto the wide-open gravel-filled portion in front of the house. The bodies of at least 6 of Zeke's men litter the driveway and parking area. John limps over to them, a tempered smile on his face. "So glad to see you," he says, offering his hand. "You too," she replies as they shake. "Where's Zeke?" Ray. "Stay down!" Ray shouts as bullets rip through the trees, showering him with bits of leaves, bark, and branches. Rebecca looks over at him from her position. "There's too many!" she shouts back before leaning around the side of the tree she's hiding behind and firing 2 shots, taking out one of the 10 or so men advancing on them through the thick forest. "We have to retreat," Daniel yells, while firing a couple of rounds. Anna is a couple of yards away, lying flat in the undergrowth, carefully sighting one of Zeke's men through a rifle scope. "You go," she shouts. "I got this." Ray peeks around the side of the tree and counts at least 6 men, although he's sure there's more. "Okay, back to the cabin," he orders, and the 3 of them begin slowly retreating through the closely packed trees. A renewed volley of bullets riddles the forest as the trio quickly dashes from tree to tree. The sound of a single high-powered rifle shot echoes through the trees, and people begin yelling and screaming, their voices bouncing between the trunks. Ray darts to the next closest tree and watches as Rebecca does the same before she falls to the ground, a cloud of red mist bursting out of her right shoulder. She screams and falls face down into the vine and pine needle-covered ground. "Fuck!" Ray says, before he fires back, holding the trigger down and spraying the woods with bullets. "Ray, come on!" Derek screams. "We have to go." "That's 2 down, Ray. I'm coming for you," Zeke shouts, his voice drifting through the woods. Ray, Derek, and Daniel scramble through the trees, weaving between the trunks until they finally spot the little cabin in the distance. They rush out of the woods and race to the cabin. Delia greets them at the door, a concerned look on her face. "What the hell is happening?" she asks. "Zeke's coming this way," Ray says. "Where are the kids?" "They're down the river a little ways. I have them hidden." "Good. You need to get down there too, right now." "I can fight, Ray," she says. "Just give me a gun." He shakes his head as the shouts and yells of Zeke's men reach the cabin. "You need to take care of the kids. You need to go," he says firmly. She nods and then frowns before turning and running around the back of the cabin and disappearing into the thick trees that border the river. One of Zeke's men stumbles out of the woods, and Derek spins around and fires 2 shots directly into his chest, killing him almost instantly. "Find some cover," Ray says, just as Zeke and about 8 of his followers emerge from the trees. Derek ducks behind the side of the cabin, firing as soon as he's settled, while Ray takes cover behind a stack of wooden barrels that they salvaged from the old mill years ago and stacked up by the cabin to use at some later date. Daniel scrambles toward a couple of small trees clustered a few feet from the cabin. "Just give it up, Ray," Zeke says. "It's over." John. "I haven't seen him," John replies, as the sound of renewed gunfire erupts behind the house. Lori rushes out of the barn, breathing heavy with sweat rolling down her face. "He was coming through the woods," she yells between breaths as she points off to the west. Lori spots Olivia and gives her a nod of the head and a smile. "Are we clear up here?" he asks Olivia. "As far as I can tell, everyone is either dead or dying." "Okay, let's go then," he says, before turning and heading for the first barn. Olivia looks at Tina, Kim, and Leah. "You 3 stay here. Make sure that no one else comes down the driveway or gets into the house, okay? Check for any wounded." "We're on it," Tina replies. Olivia chases after John and Lori. She looks up at Julia in the barn loft as she runs through the wide-open doors. The gunfire in the distance becomes more intense, and the sound of people screaming drifts through the farm. It only takes a few seconds for Olivia and Rose to catch up to John. She looks down at his leg. "Is it bad?" she asks. "It's okay. Hurts like a mother, but I'll be fine," he replies, as he limps along, trailing a few yards behind Lori. Suddenly, 2 men burst out of the trees to their right and open fire. Lori dives into the corn stalks as bullets rip through the crops. John turns and fires at the same time as Olivia and Rose. 2 seconds later, the men are on the ground, blood spewing from multiple gunshot wounds. John watches as Olivia dashes into the cornfield and helps Lori up. "You okay?" "I'm fine, thanks," she replies, while brushing herself off. "Let's move," John shouts. He looks at Rose as they're running. "Nice shooting," he says. "Thanks," she replies. "Nice farm." "Thanks." As they're approaching the fire tower, John looks up and spots Robin peering through the scope on her rifle and then firing. Erin does the same from a prone position on the left side of the decking. Robin drops to her knees as bullets begin peppering the hut. John stops at the edge of the field and slips to the ground and immediately opens fire on a group of 3 men advancing on the tower. His first shot hits the lead attacker in the leg, and he goes down. The other 2 turn and begin firing on John and the girls. They scatter, and Rose screams as a slug rips through her left arm. Olivia pushes her down and returns fire, hitting one of the shooters in the chest. The last attacker throws up his arms and drops his weapon. Lori jogs over to him, pointing her weapon at him the entire time. "Don't move!" Robin shouts down to him, while keeping her rifle trained on him. "Shit," Olivia says, as she helps Rose to her feet, being careful of her injured limb. Wow, this hurts, she says, looking down at the bloody wound. Yeah, I know, Olivia says with a grin. You really should head back to the house and get that treated, John says. Rose looks over at the remaining attacker and frowns. In a minute, she says, before bending down and picking up her pistol and marching up the hill toward the tower. John looks at Olivia, and she shrugs before they start following her up the hill. About halfway to the tower, Olivia looks at the man kneeling in front of Lori. Oh, shit! Rose, wait! She says. But before she can react, Rose lifts her pistol, and the man looks at her, his mouth dropping open in astonishment. Rose? He asks. Ken, she says, before firing 3 slugs directly into his chest. Jesus! Lori says, jumping back as he falls over backwards into the grass. What the fuck? John asks, frowning at her. Unfinished business, Rose says, before turning and starting to walk back down toward the house. Where are you going? John asks. To get my arm looked at, like you said, she replies. Chapter 46. We have to find Zeke, Olivia says. I thought you said he was coming through the woods, John says to Lori. He was. We spotted him advancing in this direction. Suddenly, a flare arcs into the sky from down by the river cabin. What the hell is that? Lori asks. It has to be Zeke, John says, and they run to the top of the hill above the cabin. They can see Ray and 2 others defending the cabin against an onslaught of more than 8 men. Robin! Aaron! John shouts, pointing down the hill. Oh shit, Aaron says, before chambering around in her rifle, sighting a target through her scope and firing. The sound of her shot echoes through the little valley, and John and the others watch as the target goes down in a cloud of red mist. Here we go, John shouts, as they start down the hill. About half the men attacking the cabin turn their attention to John and his band, charging up the hill, while firing wildly. John weaves and dodges before taking cover behind a small tree, as bullets whiz and buzz past him. He rolls out from his hiding spot and fires twice, taking down one of the men with 2 shots to the chest. Lori pops up from behind a large boulder and fires, hitting 2 of Zeke's men, knocking them both to the ground. Go! Olivia shouts, as she provides cover for John and Lori to move farther down the hill. Zeke's men halt their advance, taking cover as Olivia takes out one more attacker with a shot to the head. Several of the other men begin to panic, shooting wildly or dropping their weapons and running into the woods. Lori hits another one in the leg and arm as she and John continue descending. The sound of a shot from behind them echoes through the woods, and one of the attackers drops to the ground, gripping his leg and screaming in pain. John looks back toward the tower, and Robin flashes him a quick thumbs up. The trio moves forward as Zeke's men continue to fall back toward the cabin. John spots Zeke charging forward toward Ray and his defenders, blanketing them in a fury of bullets. Ray turns to Derek and says something to him before he disappears back behind the cabin. John and Lori fire on Zeke's 5 remaining men, taking out 2 with carefully aimed shots. But Zeke continues rushing forward toward Ray. He stumbles back and trips on a tree root and falls to the ground. In an instant, Zeke is on him, the 2 of them struggling while his 3 other men attack the cabin itself. Jesus, the kids are in there! Lori shouts, as they finally reach the bottom of the hill and charge toward the little cabin. She and Olivia race to the front door and rush inside. The sound of fighting and yelling drifts outside, but John is focused on Zeke and Ray. John aims for Zeke, but he and Ray are thrashing around too much to risk a shot. He watches in horror as Zeke raises a knife and plunges it deeply into Ray's chest. Zeke! John shouts as he charges forward, barreling into him and knocking him off of Ray. They both go tumbling into the dry, dusty ground, and Zeke's knife skitters away into the dirt. He scrambles back to his feet and pulls a pistol from his belt, pointing it at John and grinning. "It's over!" he screams. John closes his eyes and takes a deep breath as a shot rings out. But after a few seconds, he opens his eyes and looks at Zeke. He's just standing in front of him as a bloodstain begins to slowly grow in the center of his chest. His pistol slips from his hand, and he drops to his knees, his mouth moving as if he's trying to say something. But the only thing that emerges is a dribble of blood that trickles down his chin. John turns and looks up the hill, and Julia waves down to him, lifting her rifle into the air. Zeke wavers back and forth for a few moments before falling face down into the dirt. John jumps to his feet and rushes over to Ray. "Ray," he says, while leaning over him. But the life has already left his body. John lowers his head and sighs, feeling utterly defeated. "Oh shit, the kids," he says to himself, before jumping to his feet and rushing to the door of the little cabin, his weapon drawn. But just as he steps onto the old porch, Lori and Olivia emerge with 3 of Zeke's men in front of them, their hands on their heads. A couple of them have cuts or bruises on their faces, and Olivia has a self-satisfied grin on hers. "Where are the kids?" John asks. "They're not in there," Lori replies, as she and Olivia push the men forward and off the porch. "Well, where the fuck are they?" he asks out loud. "I don't know." John looks around. "Are we clear?" he asks. "I think we're clear," Olivia says. "We need to find the kids," John says, his voice full of worry and desperation. "We're right here," Delia says, as she emerges from the woods by the river's edge, with the kids in tow. Daniel brings up the rear, along with a couple of energetic goats at his heels. Jake spots John and runs over to him, his arms wide apart. "Grandpa!" he shouts, hugging him fiercely. John returns the hug and holds his grandson close for a couple of minutes, before looking at Lori and Olivia, who are standing strategically in front of Ray's body. They give him a nod, while a few tears trickle down their cheeks. "Did we win?" Jake asks. "I think so, but we're going to check. You need to stay here with Delia and your friends, okay?" "Okay, I'll take care of the goats." "You do that, buddy," he says, waiting for him to disappear around the back of the cabin before he turns to Derek. "Let's get him inside." They carefully lift Ray's body and carry him into the cabin, laying him gently on the couch in the sparse little living room. "We're going to see what's what," John says to Derek. "Stay here and guard the kids, okay?" "You got it," he replies, before heading back around the rear of the cabin, to where the kids and Delia were trying to round up the last couple stray goats. "We'll be back," he says to Delia and Jake. "Okay," they say at the same time. "Come on," John says to Olivia and Lori, as he starts heading back up toward the house. "What about them?" Lori asks, gesturing toward the 3 men kneeling by the front of the cabin. "Get something to tie them up and we'll take them with us." "What about him?" she asks, looking over at Zeke's body. "Let him rot," Olivia says. "What she said," John adds. Chapter 47. "Grandpa, are you okay?" Robin shouts as she runs toward him, a rifle slung over her shoulder. "I'm all right, Robin," he replies as he limps up to the tower. She embraces him around the waist and lays her head against his chest. "You can call me Bertie if you want," she says quietly. He nods and smiles as he gently strokes her hair. After a few seconds, she takes a step back and looks at him, a serious expression on her face. Oh, we won, right? We did, he says. Now we need to make sure everyone is okay. She looks at the three men standing in front of Lori and Olivia and frowns. What about them? She asks, glaring at them. I'm not sure yet. We have to let them go, she says. It's the only thing to do. He pats her gently on the shoulder and smiles. You're probably right. Do you want to stay here or come with us? He asks, looking off toward the house. I have to go with you. What if Mom's hurt or someone else? He nods his agreement. It might not be pretty. None of this is pretty. It's just something we have to do. Yeah, he says, before turning to Lori. Let's tie them up here. Erin can stay and watch over them. Is that okay? Erin nods as she climbs off the ladder, stepping up next to Lori. No problem, she says, looking at the three men who lower their heads and stare at the ground. After tying them to one of the massive legs of the tower, John, Lori, Olivia, and Robin head down the slope to the house. They move slowly so that John can keep up without putting too much stress on his injured leg. When they're about halfway down, Mary and Linda come out onto the rear porch. By the time they reach the bottom of the hill, Linda has tears in her eyes. Ray? She asks. John just slowly shakes his head. I'm sorry, he says quietly. It's not your fault, she says, stepping up to him and placing her hand on his arm. We have him in the cabin, John says. Robin, can you take Linda down there? Mary asks. Of course, she replies, handing a rifle over to Lori. Robin takes Linda's hand, and the two of them start walking back to the cabin. John looks at Mary and shakes his head. I tried, he says, struggling to keep the tears at bay. I know you did, she says, wrapping her arms around him and holding him tight for a few minutes. After John pulls himself together, he steps back and wipes his face and chin. What about Jake? Mary asks. He's fine. He's with Dahlia and Derek, and a bunch of goats. She smiles and lets out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Are we all clear up here? He asks. We're all clear, Mary says. Casualties? Stacia, Jason, and Phil. We're still looking for Rebecca and Anna. I think they were with Ray, but no one's seen either of them. Dean is hurt, but he should survive. We have some other injuries, but none of them are life-threatening, she says. I should have done better. Dad, it could have been a lot worse. This place is still here, and these people are still alive because of what you did, because of how you prepared them. Still, he says, shaking his head. What about my girls? Olivia asks. How many were there? 4? Yeah. They're all good. They're treating the wounded, she says. I gotta go check on them, Olivia says. I'll see you later. All right, John says, nodding to her as she heads toward the barn. Mary watches her for a moment and then turns back to John. We have prisoners, or whatever you want to call them. So do we. We need to decide what to do with them. I know, he says, as he begins limping toward the back porch. You are all that's left of Zeke's group, John says, as he stands in front of the 7 remaining members, while leaning against one of the porch posts. The men are all on their knees, their hands tied behind their backs. Most of them are looking at the ground, their heads bowed. We've talked about what to do with you, John says, looking over at Olivia and Rose. Oh, God, one of the men says, swallowing hard as he stares at the girls. Shut the fuck up, Gary, Rose says. Part of me wants to let them do what they want to you, since you apparently did whatever you wanted to them, he says, the disgust in his voice almost palpable. It wasn't all of us, Gary whines. You didn't stop it, Rose says, sneering at him. Olivia touches her arm, and she takes a breath and steps back. You've also come to our home and killed members of our family, he says, while glaring at the group. An eye for an eye, Rose says. Rose, please, John says, as she sighs and turns away, walking back to the front door and crossing her arms. One of the men begins sobbing, and Olivia kneels at the edge of the porch. It's too late for that, Robert, she says. John stands for a moment and waits until Olivia looks back at him. Sorry, she mouths, before standing again and moving behind him. So here's what we're going to do, he says. First, you are going to bury your comrades who got themselves killed. Second, you're going to leave this place and never return. I've been told that your farm has been burned to the ground, so you will not go there. The farm owned by Daniel and Julia is also a no-go. Also, Buellton is off-limits, so you will also not go there. Where are we supposed to go? Gary asks. Not our problem, Olivia says. Olivia, sorry. That's not our problem, Gary, John says, glancing at Olivia, who gives him a quick smile in return. We will provide you with enough water and food for a few days. You can go anywhere you want, except the places I just mentioned. You can't just kick us out on the street. Why not? If you had your way, we'd all be dead, and you'd be living in our houses. So consider yourself lucky. A couple of the prisoners look at each other before lowering their heads in resignation. There's one other thing, John says, and they look up at him. If we see any of you ever again, it will not end well for you. Do you understand? A couple of them nod, and John shakes his head. I need more than that, he says. I need you to say that you understand. They all say the words, some with more conviction than others. All right, Daniel and Tina will take you to the front gate, so you can bury your friends and to make sure that you leave, John says, looking over at the pair. They nod and start getting the men to their feet and begin marching them down the driveway. John turns to Olivia and Rose. Does that work for you? I would have preferred something more definitive, Rose says. But I understand why we can't do that. This'll work. Good to know, John says. Phil opens the front door and steps out onto the porch. It's time, he says quietly. Okay, John replies. Do you want to come? The girls look at him and then at each other. We don't want to intrude, Olivia says. You wouldn't be at all. You're part of our family now. Okay, let me go get the others. I'll see you back there, Rose says. John and Olivia head through the house and out the kitchen door onto the back deck. A large group of people are gathered near the little cluster of trees a few yards from the house. John sighs and steps down off the porch, and he and Olivia walk slowly toward the gathering. The minute that people spot them, they begin to move aside, creating a sort of path to the front of the crowd. Many of them pat John on the shoulder or nod respectfully to him as he passes. When he reaches the front, he glances at the 6 freshly dug graves and lowers his head before turning to the group. Linda is standing a few feet away with Mary and Robin at her side. John looks at her and she gives him a little nod, and he sighs deeply, trying to gain control of his emotions. He looks at Anna and Rebecca, both of whom are sporting bloody bandages. There are many others in the crowd who are carrying the signs of battle with them, cuts, scrapes, and worse. Thank you, everyone, for coming, he says. I really don't know what to say, but I guess I should say something. I'll try to do my best. We're gathered here, once again for a sad reason, to mourn our friends, our family. Stacia, Jason, Ashley, Sam, Phil, and Ray. I say their names now, but we need to be sure that we never forget them and the sacrifice that they made so that we might survive. I know that you may not have known all of them as well as you did others, but that does not lessen the pain that we feel at their absence." He pauses again, taking a few slow breaths before continuing. "We need to remember them as we continue to build this place into the haven that Ray and all the others who came before dreamed about. I hope this will be the last time that we have to fight for our freedom and our lives, but I cannot promise you that. I can promise that I will always stand by you, and I will never stop fighting for the place that these brave individuals gave their lives to defend. Thank you all for coming, and hold each other close tonight, and every day after." John walks over to Linda and embraces her, the two of them holding each other close for a few minutes. "That was beautiful," she says, when they finally release one another. "I tried," he says sheepishly. "Well, what now?" Olivia asks. "Now we go on." Chapter 48. "Are you sure?" John asks, as he and Olivia are standing near the front gate. "It's time," she replies. "You've supported us long enough." "You know you're more than welcome to stay." "I know, but Buellton has always been my home, and I think it's time we tried to bring it back to life. It's been 3 months and we haven't heard anything from the government," Lori says. "Help is not coming." "You're probably right, but we have to try. The only way we're going to survive in the future is to have more than one community that's prosperous." "You can always come to us for help if you need it." "I'm sure we'll take you up on that, more times than you're probably expecting." Rose comes walking over alongside Derek, carrying a couple of wooden crates filled with supplies. "I don't really like the idea of breaking up the band," she says, looking at Olivia. "Me either, but all good things come to an end," she replies, and the two embrace, tears running down both their cheeks. "I think that's everything," Kim says as she walks over, Leia by her side. "You know, you're just down the road," Lori says. "Exactly. So why are we acting like this is goodbye? It's more like, we'll see you next week when we need something fixed," Leia says. "Hey, I know how to fix things," Daniel says as he walks up with Julia and their daughter. "I really hate to lose you guys," John says while shaking Daniel's hand. "Me too, but we need to get back to our place and rebuild." "Yeah, I get that." "Plus, these guys are going to need all the help they can get," he says with a sly grin. "Shut up, Dan," Olivia says as she laughs. "Well, you know if you need anything, all you need to do is stop by," John says. "And you can always come and visit," she replies. "You got it," he says, before stepping over and pulling her into a fierce embrace. When they finally separate, John's eyes are filled with tears, which he wipes away with the back of his hand. Everyone heads to the trucks and climbs in, waving as they back slowly out of the driveway and onto the road. "We'll see you soon," Olivia shouts. "You know it," Mary shouts back, and they pull away, disappearing down the highway in a matter of minutes. John and Mary link arms and start back down the driveway, with Lori walking beside them, and Rose and Derek bringing up the rear. They walk the entire way to the house without a word being spoken. As they're approaching the barn, Linda steps out onto the porch and waves them over. "Can I have a word?" she asks John. "Of course," he replies, looking over at Mary and frowning. She shrugs as they climb the steps and walk inside, closing the door behind them. Linda is a few feet ahead as they follow her down the hallway toward the kitchen. As soon as they enter the room, John stops short and looks around at all the people gathered in the small space, including Rebecca, Dean, Delia, Aaron, and Anna. Jake and Robin are standing off to the side, huge smiles on their faces. Linda turns around and smiles at him. "Please sit down," she says. "What is happening?" he asks, looking at everyone. "We have something to tell you," Linda says, taking a seat on the other side of the island. "Can you just tell me what it is? This seems so ominous." Linda chuckles. "Sorry for the drama, but we all wanted to be here for this." "For what?" John asks, his patience beginning to fray, slightly. "To ask you to take over as leader of the Homestead." He looks at Mary and Laurie, and they both smile at him. "Did you know about this?" he asks them. They just continue to smile at him. He shakes his head and turns back to Linda and the others. "You have others who have been here longer than me," he says, looking at Rebecca and finally Laurie. "That's true, but we wouldn't even be having this conversation if it weren't for you," Linda replies. "You're already the de facto leader anyway, so why not make it official? We've already talked about it, and we're all in agreement." "If that's what you really want, how can I say no?" Linda smiles, and the crowd suddenly bursts into a spontaneous round of applause. "Thank you," he says. "I hope I can make you proud. So, who wants to get to work?" Mary asked me to start a journal, or diary, or something of the sort. So here it is. We haven't heard a single thing from the federal government after 6 more months. The message that we heard when we first arrived at the Homestead is still the same. I don't think there's much of a chance that anyone is coming to help us anytime soon. But I'm still holding out hope. Mary doesn't think they're ever coming. It's been a busy 6 months since Olivia and the girls moved back to Buellton. They're really starting to make something out of the place. They're slowly rebuilding some of the structures downtown, and are doing their best to ensure that the houses on the outskirts of town are kept up, so they don't fall into disrepair. A few people have joined their little community, so I think they're well on their way. Daniel and Julia came to visit last week, and things at their farm are going even better than any of us had even hoped for. It seems that the fire that he set before leaving and coming to the homestead sort of burned itself out before it caused too much damage, so both the barn and house were repairable without too much work. They had a great harvest as well, and we both now have working tractors salvaged from the surrounding area. They're older John Deere models, but because of their age, they are completely unaffected by the EMP burst. It certainly makes tilling, planting, and harvesting much easier. Not to be outdone, but things here at the homestead are going well, too. We've started construction on a second cabin down by the river to help with our housing issue, due to the arrival of 6 more people from some of the smaller nearby cities that have fallen on hard times. They've brought wonderful skills of their own, including expert carpentry and even some medical training, which was sorely needed. Ray was our resident builder, and with his loss, it was becoming more difficult to keep up with the repairs and new projects that we had been planning. We've also started work on restoring the old mill. Franklin, our new resident handyman, says that all the bones of the building are still in great condition, and he thinks with a little bit of work, the water wheel and grist stones could become functional again, which is great news. One of the other added benefits of our new arrivals is children. For almost a year, we've only had Jake, since Robin has forbidden me to call her child. And honestly, she is 15 this year, so technically she's right. Anyway, our new members brought 3 children with them, all under the age of 8, which has been great for Jake. They're also all very hardworking and pull their weight around more than some of the adults, who will remain nameless. As far as the current situation of the world is concerned, we've heard nothing. We have had multiple discussions about sending a scouting team to Boston or Hartford to see what's going on. But it seems like a dangerous gamble, with very little in the way of payoff. Even if they do find out that some of the cities are recovering, what does that mean for us? Forced relocation? Seizure of our property? We came to the conclusion that it would be better to just wait and see what develops. It certainly seems like this blackout or EMP attack has taken a larger toll on the country than we first realized. If the rest of the world is like this, I can imagine that it may take years, or maybe even decades, for things to return to normal again. I think we'll be better off just staying here at the homestead and making the best of it. We're nearly self-sufficient, with the exception of gasoline and diesel, and we've nearly exhausted the supply in Buellton at the 2 stations. We may be forced to send out a mission to try and find fuel. I just hope it doesn't turn into some sort of road warrior situation. We did decide to make a quick trip back to our hometown to try and get an idea about progress that might be being made. So Lori, Rebecca, and I took the Scout and headed back down the mountain, stopping at our old cabin to scavenge whatever was left there in the way of useful tools or other supplies. And what we saw was not encouraging. Just spying on the place from the overlook, it seems like the majority of the town is burned to the ground, including almost the entire business district and a large number of residential houses. We couldn't see any signs of life from our vantage point, including any military vehicles. It truly looks as if the place has been abandoned. I have no idea what happened to the people who stayed behind. I can only hope that they got out and made their way to safety. But I think that's unrealistic, if I'm being honest. I had some hope that we might be able to sneak into town to scavenge for supplies, but that doesn't seem like a good idea now. The last thing we need is to get caught up in some sort of house-to-house street fight with any remaining locals. The other problem with trying to get to one of the bigger cities is the risk of travel itself. We've already had a few run-ins with what you might call bandits on the road between Buellton and our place, although we dealt with them pretty quickly and decisively. But if they're up here in the mountains, there are certainly gangs on the highways surrounding the bigger towns and cities. I don't think it's worth the risk. We'll just keep monitoring the broadcasts and hoping that something comes through eventually. I think that's it for now. I'll fill in more when Mary reminds me, or more than likely, makes me.